Okay, that's enough silence. Hello, friends. Greetings. I have a number of people live with me listening, and a couple people live to talk. Ralph C is here. He's going to join with the chat.
Hello there.
That was Ralph C. And maybe Disnegative. You're going to talk Disnegative or just listen? You're really, really faint. I can try to adjust that. You're still really, really faint. It's a little better. I'll turn you up as much as I can. And we'll go with that. Helene, welcome. Helene is a frequent contributor here on these relatively new idea for a regular stream. Also want to mention to anybody that I've decided I'm going to stream every weekday at this time, 11 a.m. Mountain. It's a good time for me. I'm also going to limit it to 2 hours at a pop. That's just a personal choice. So today's topic, I'm going to type it in here, is summons and efficiency. Topic of the day. And credit to Lego Warrior for the idea. There. There's nobody watching on Twitch yet, but I'm sure that'll change. You guys don't need to watch on Twitch if you don't want to, because you're all here. If you do start watching on Twitch, just please turn its volume off, or make sure I can't get it through your microphone. I think everybody kind of knows that. So the question that came up today was, how do you decide what things you might want to summon, particularly if we have a look here at the Conjuration group. So I've loaded up a game that's over, but a game where I had the ability, or I have the ability to summon everything. This is also we'll take a quick look. This is also a Dominions Enhanced game, so there's a little more options than usual. I'll mostly try to discuss things that are normal vanilla. So if we have a look here. So let's just assume, let's say somebody has Earth. So we're sitting here at Earth Magic as our primary, and there's not a whole heck of a lot. The kobolds are kind of unique. Things like cave grubs. Yeah, that's what I meant by unique. One of the classic summons that, say, in early game, an Earth Nation might want to look at is ogres. And Rovsi, I think you and I have talked about ogres in text chat. There's a couple of sort of niche situations where they're useful. They're pretty cost effective at a gem each. And so I suppose I kind of try to use a rule of thumb that anything that's less than 1 gem per unit is probably worth summoning, unless it's got some crippling problem, such as very low morale or undisciplined. I'm going to bring the Mod Inspector over, and I'm just going to make sure that I don't have it set to, we'll turn off Lemuria. We'll limit ourselves right now to just Conjuration and Rituals, and we'll go without Nationals. We'll just look at the generics. So we'll sort it by the Conjuration level. And we can kind of, look by path. So here's your basic selection. I don't know why Bareth is packed. We want generics only, I think, for the purpose of this discussion. Do I have a mod on? No, I thought Bareth's pact was oh, that's that one. Okay, never mind. Anyways, looking here at kind of the basics of what's available for Earth Magic, and we're not seeing everything. If I got set wrong, why am I not seeing Troll's Tribe?
Forest Troll Tribe is a nature spell.
I know that Forest is, but I'm thinking the Troll King. thought he'd show up here. If I turn something off. Ritual in combat, underwater land, any nation. I might have to turn this off. No, we'll leave it on for the moment. But let's just look at ogres as an example of a summon that an Earth nation might want to consider in the early game, or for certain niche uses. So the critical thing here is that they only take Earth 1, and you can get a few extra if you've got higher level Earth. They have some disadvantages, pretty low magic resistance. They don't have undisciplined. The one significant advantage for certain situations is they've got resist cold. So I'm going to jump out here, switch over to death, and I'm going to show an example of a time when a synergy can work. And I've done this. So I had some death and low level death magic, and I had some low level earth magic, and I had some death gems and some earth gems, and I was in a situation with a sieged fort. I had to desperately hold that siege fort, so I got 5 whites. They're pretty pricey, but they're really tough. And then to help them out, because they have the chill aura, I grabbed some ogres and I put the two together in squads. So the idea was the ogres could eat up some damage and the whites would do the killing. And that was to hold a gate during a storm. So I guess I'm highlighting a couple things. I'm highlighting cost per summon, the quality of the summon, and in this case things like chill, resistances, a pretty tough weapon, lots of protection, but at very high cost. So what can I do to avoid them getting too many attacks and harassed? The size is a little tricky, but at least the ogres are 3, so there's 2 per square, and there's 3 whites per square. I think I didn't put them in the same squad, I just put them in 2 different squads right together. Now what game was that in? I don't think I can show an example, but we'll just jump out here. So in general, does that make sense? Do you see what I'm talking about synergizing? So this is an early game, possibly emergency option. I need something right now to keep myself alive. Actually, I do have that game available. Give me a minute to do some organizing, because that was in my Erythia game. It would have been somewhere in the earlier turns. So we'll quickly set that up and I'll see if I can find it. But in the meantime we can keep discussing here in the Mod Inspector some of these options. So I'm thinking I'm going to be about turn 29. Let's have a quick look. Dun 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 dun. Right, so is this the one? That's Yetis. Might have to back up. Try backing up 1 turn. Maybe this isn't the game where I did it. Sometimes you play so darn many games you don't remember all these tidbits. Yeah, that's mostly garbage. No. Alright, but that was a fairly good example of another summon that I used in this particular case for the purpose of holding a gate. Hey, thank you, Rip Sinners. Or RIP Sinners, take your pick. So we wanted to have a look here. So what happened? No, that's the previous one. Okay, so I grabbed some Yetis. A somewhat similar idea is something to plug the gate. In this case, and they're a little bit related.
Interrupt you right there.
What's that?
Sorry to interrupt. Your stream has the browser blocking the game.
There we go. good stuff. So you can see, in the army setup, I decided to summon a few Yetis. If we look at the spell, Yetis are W and R. There they are. So that's not something you're always going to have a chance to use. But they're low research. They're pretty tough. They're significantly tougher than ogres. Roughly a little over 2 gems a pop. And if we look at the actual units, they've got some relatively useful features. These sticks and stones, 19 damage, they 2 a time, seriously good range. That at least it's something going on. So there's an interesting kind of summon. And then this is turn 27, so at 28 was actually the fight. So we have a look at the fight. So in this case, I guess I'm showing examples of doing some summoning to hold walls up and or hold a gate or, desperate last ditch defense. It would have been 29 was the fight. Now here I've grabbed a few griffins. Partly, their siege defense is pretty awful. That's due to the undisciplined. And then, similarly, the Yetis, pretty good siege defense, but I still didn't have anywhere enough siege defense to stop these 120 units. So let's just jump to turn 30 and take a look at that fight. Oh, well, what am I doing here? Is that 30? Well, must have been in 29 was the first fight. Trying to do all this off memory. There we go. So that one was successful, but arguably he just kind of set a pro, but it cost him pretty heavily. And that's actually due to Magic Duel. I quite deliberately set up some Magic Duel. I don't know why I didn't have the Yetis up front. There are very few low research summoned units that I would recommend as a primary troop. In fact, I don't think there's any. What do you think, Ralph? Can you think of any early low research summons that you would use as expanders or primaries?
The only thing I could think of would be for Nazca Condors, maybe.
Yes, Condors. Yeah.
Not as much anymore.
Yeah, and that's an example. But that's also a national troop, and often national summons have a lot of synergies with your nation. That's probably why they're national summons. And yeah, somebody else got journal. Good Earth Magic.
Not using it as Good Earth Gem. Not using it as the mainstay of your army, but a few of the crabs.
Well, the question in the Twitch was low research, so I'm assuming early game. Let's just take a look. We'll get out of this fight. Let's go to research. So in Conjuration, we can turn water off. In the earlies, without mods, ogres are not bad. I really stay away from animals. No, this is a questions and answers, so as long as we're sticking kind of the topic of summons, we'll go right ahead and go at it. And I'm going to define early as level 3 or less. So shades, maybe, depending if you can synergize them with other things. Yetis, I would consider Yetis. if I had a lot of water gems and I had air water. Not easy. The cave beasts are kind of good, but you need a damn cave. So finding a cave early isn't easy. Go ahead, Cherno.
Yeah, I was thinking, if I recall correctly, cave crabs had a type.
We can... Here, let's look at the cave beasts. The cave beasts are kind of neat. So if we can just find all the cave beasts. So cave grubs, 5 for 6. And you get a corrosive bite, 52 hit points. Size 4 is awkward. Serious siege bonus. I mean, if by chance you happen to find a cave and you can get a lab in it, or you're Agartha, but Agartha has other options, national options. So the cave crab, so you get 1 for 4. It's a lot of hit points, massive protection, terrible magic resistance, but in the early game, magic resistance isn't a huge issue. They are undisciplined, so that's always a nuisance. The cave cows, you know, they've got a spit, undisciplined. So all of the cave guys I would consider, I think, except the cave drake. The cave drake's just, well, yeah, they're pretty iffy. I guess they're not bad, and they don't need a cave. So they're the only one I think that doesn't need a cave. Being a drake, though, almost all the drake, there's generally better drakes. So that was a good point about, you know, the cave summons. I'm going to jump back and just check the chat. Yeah, a cave in the right mage. The only case would be Agartha starting in a cave. But Agartha's got the national summons. So on the crab? Yep. Let's look at its weapon. There's those crabs. So that claw. Armor piercing. Okay. Yep. And it's... You think it's blunt? It doesn't really say here.
I think it's non-typed.
Oh, non-typed. Oh, okay. Which means it's not gonna be affected by liquid body or temper flesh. And that's a lot of damage, 25. With an attack skill of 11. Not bad. I can see grabbing crabs. But if I jump back to this, where's the spell here? Where did I put it? Nope, that's ogres. Well, let's just do this again. Cave crab. Only available in caves. So, yeah, that's a tricky one. So you need that combination of a little bit of luck, grabbing yourself a cave, being able to get a lab into it, and the right kind of mage. Although, earth water is not a difficult cross path. There's a lot of nations with it. Air water for the Yetis is a little tougher. But really, if you're looking at summons in the early game, all of your elementals, even the little ones in the early game, I would consider quite valuable. You definitely want to go up to the level 5 elementals are much, much better. And you get the power spells, earth power and phoenix power and stuff along the way, except for storm power, because you can't do storm power till you get a bunch of evocation research. So those are good. But almost all the animals, if we just kind of move this aside, if we look at only the nature spells, most of the animals are pretty bad. A couple of them, national spells, aren't too bad. I know the national summon elephants, you can use it. It's kind of interesting. It's like most elephants, although they have worse morale than elephants you buy. And I have
There's a
used
couple
bog beasts.
forms.
Pardon
Yeah,
me.
the bog beasts are okay.
And they have a very specific niche use. I'll bring that up
Well,
with
they have poison aura.
and poison resistance. So one case where I've used the bog beasts was specifically to work with foul vapors. So if we
The Kitharonic lions they're okay as well.
they are, you get one a pop, right?
And they're magical beings for some reason.
Yeah, so then you get the leadership problem. That's a pain in the butt. 2 attacks is nice. They're still
And they have decent
undisciplined.
protection.
They do. And they've got good magic resistance and good morale. So, yeah, a little bit higher, like at Conjuration 4, but not out of line. Yeah,
But then you got Manticores.
pardon me?
You got Manticores so soon afterwards.
Yeah. And the Kitharonics are 5 each, so that's a bit pricey. You know, if you're looking at things that cost 5 each, whites, you know, they're 5 a pop. But that is death gems. So, and again, you've got the whole business of how am I going to balance how to spend my gems? Summons, forging, battle spells. I mean, the first battle spells most people tend to go for is elementals. So, any other? I think we've covered the cave quite well. Yeah, Goroth in the text chat mentions that most of the early summons are not necessarily worth the mage time or the gem cost. And hopefully during the early game, you're just buying the troops you need, you're expanding fine. If you end up fighting and you weren't prepared for a rush or you're not a rusher, I can see certain strategies where some rush nations might choose to supplement with summons. Now, if we want to talk about... Yeah.
I would like to argue that cave grubs are an incredibly efficient summon. Definitely worth labbing up a cave forward position because that is teaching per jump.
Well, I think I agree with you that all of the cave summons look good to me. Every single one of them. Except the cave drake. But doesn't need a cave.
What's wrong with the cave drake?
I just think it's too expensive for what is just a piece of meat.
Isn't that what the cave crab is?
Cave crab hits, I would think, significantly harder.
Cave drake hits for 21 slashing damage. It's not untype AP damage.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's also got really low stats though.
Let's go back to it. Let's go back to the cave drake. Where'd he go? Mr. Drake, Mr. Drake. Did I turn him off? Turn off a few things here. So, magic resistance is quite good. Morale is quite good. Attack skill is terrible. Defense skill is terrible. Is it ever going to hit with an attack skill of 8? Like the crab at least has an attack of 11. But I think you can argue for both, depending on the situation.
Well, yeah. I think the main use for the cave drake is just to sit in front of stuff, take damage, and not care, and that's probably the main use for the cave crab as well.
Exactly.
So in that regard, they're pretty similar. Technically, you can, if you have a Dragon Mastery Pretender or something like that, you could get multiple cave drakes.
Yes.
They are a drake.
Yes.
That's a very niche advantage.
Dragon Mastery changes the equation an
I would
awful
think
lot.
The cave crab's probably better.
Yep. But if you just want meat, if we look at ogres, we're getting every 2 ogres is the same amount of hit points as a cave drake, plus there's 2 per square, and they're a lot cheaper. So if you're just trying to grab some hit points to be a front line, I'd probably go ogres.
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
And then they have better siege strength overall because you get more of them.
And on top of that, they're not undisciplined, which gives you a lot more scripting options. Now, maybe since we went to the topic of cave drakes, I'm going to move the mod inspector for a second. Oops, that wasn't it. There we go. I think I'll go to the research screen and no, sorry, thaumaturgy. Right? Where is that darn spell? Dragon Master. Oh gosh. Alright, I forgot that it's way up at level 8 now. Well, that is a totally different discussion. There was a time when the last time I really used my Dragon Master was back at Dominions 3, and due to a mod, it was reduced to, I think, 10 nature gems and level 5 for research. And that suddenly made drakes a lot more interesting, a lot more viable, because you get 3 a pop every time you cast a drake spell. And drakes are frost, fire, cave, and sea serpents are a drake. There's another one too. I think wyverns are a drake. If we jump back here. But like Rofsy said, nowadays, with the way it's set up, I think the only way you're going to see significant amounts of Dragon Master. Wyverns are a drake. Wyverns are generally pretty darn bad, but if you were to get 4 per 3 gems, there's things you could do. I realize that, and it's not uncommon that I have a tendency to remember strategies I used 10 years ago. It got nerfed, and I don't know why it got nerfed. I can quickly take a short look at Dominions, the mod inspector for Dominions 4, and see if when Drake got changed might help us explain that situation, because I'm sure it was lower. No, it's been enchantment 8 for a long time, which basically makes it a useless spell. Looks like it wasn't Thaumaturgy 6 in Dom 4, but it was lower in Dominions 3, at least with the CBM mod, and that made it an interesting strategy. This is to Crows and Lions in the text chat. So, I want to take a minute here. Probably the most efficient summon in the game, I think, is the Vine Ogre. And the reason is you can make the Ivy Crown, and now you're getting 5 of them for 3 gems. So that's an incredibly efficient spell. And we were talking about the Bog Beasts. The combination of Vine Ogres and Bog Beasts is a very efficient way to prepare a Foul Vapors group if you don't have your own poison-resistant troops. The case where I used it was with Early Age Rillier, so that I could build a Foul Vapors attack using a Naiad, which I transformed to get rid of the homesickness. That's a little tidbit some people don't realize, that transform, I'm going to type that, removes homesickness. That's a useful tidbit for anybody who likes Naiads. And personally, Naiads are an excellent way for a water nature nation to boost one or the other, particularly boosting your nature. Alright. Oh, now somebody... yes, Naira brought up the fact that ogres are good for absorbing mind burns. That's an important topic. So maybe let's just take a moment here. When it comes to astral magic, under thaumaturgy, the various astral spam spells, generally the AI targets by hit points. There's some debate whether it also considers magic resistance. My experience is it's almost totally hit points. So summoning high hit point units as bait for defending against an astral nation, such as Agartha's Olms, Rilier's Mind Blasters, the Mind Burn spell, the Paralyze spell, the Soul Splay spell, that's a very valid technique. And my typical favorites for that are ordinary trolls, sea trolls, and ordinary trolls, and hill giants. If you really need a massive amount of hit points, that's more hit points than anything else you've got on the field, sacrificing 3 gems per hill giant to soak up some astral is pretty solid.
They're also useful to soak up other damaging spells like lightning bolts or something.
Exactly. They're just big sacks of hit points.
There is one really efficient hit point to gem conversion unit that you do not want to use versus astral because it's mindless, which are the
Yeah. No, because it doesn't work. They won't target it, and that's a good point. You need something with the mind. That brings up the issue of reanimation. The spell. It's not a spell I'm very fond of. If we look here. So you're going to get a whole bunch of long dead, almost all of them with very few hit points. They're all mindless. Most of them have no armor at all. And to do the same job, you could forge a skull stave, stick it on any death 1 or 2, and create skeletons within the battle using raised skeletons or horde of skeletons. And that's in the same research. So I just really don't think these are useful for hardly anything. If you want to make something to patrol and actually fight, you're a lot better off with Pale Riders.
So there are 2 main draws, I think, to reanimation.
Okay, go ahead. Absolutely.
Okay, Jack. The first is that it's research level 1.
That's correct.
So it's very early. If somebody's coming at you with, I don't know, maybe human troops or something very early, and all you need is semi-efficient chaff on the battlefield just to block a little bit longer or what have you, to have more HP. It's a very early option for that, and they're, reasonably good at fighting at least human-sized opponents. The second main draw is that there are certain nations who get substantially better reanimations than others.
Yes, that is correct. Like I've got a Lanka game right now, but I'm using the reanimation order with priests. But some of those Bandar long dead are armored, 13 hit points, good stats. Quite a difference. And then you've got some of the giant long dead.
The giants were good.
Yeah.
Some of the Patis long dead have very respectable damage. And then I think the other main one, who was it? What was I going to say? There's one more nation I was thinking of. I can't recall them right now. Oh, yes, the Ulm and Maerlande both have well-armored. One has 2 attacks, which is okay, but not great, and the other one has a great sword.
Yeah.
The great sword one is very respectable damage-wise, and it's got good protection as well.
Well, I know the Bandar can get a maul, an armored maul, long dead. So that's a good point. The danger with this one is I have seen people get a Mount King and then a bunch of long dead and send it out. There's a big problem here. Mound Kings are not mindless, and if you don't send somebody else with it, if you meet up with any kind of astral stuff, they can mind blast or mind burn the king, kill it, and all of the long dead just melt away. And I've watched that happen. That's not to say that you don't have other options. All you need to do is send a couple of Mound Kings. Well, no, you got to do a little more than that. You've got to do something to give some kind of target. So don't send a combination of long dead and a Mound King against Olms or Relay Mind Blasters. Yeah, I don't know if we can show the nation-specific long dead in the Mod Inspector. I think we can. So I have to go to Units.
If you just search for long dead.
Yeah. Let me close some junk that we're not looking at anymore.
It's a significantly large list.
It's a lot of stuff. Yeah, so let me close a bunch of things. I like the pins, but it can get out of control. So, you got things like this. Things like the Bandars. There's the one with the mall. You were mentioning Ulm. We got Refides. Not sure if the
Ulm.
Do they have a name?
Nationals are the very last ones that were added. So
Are they?
at the end of the list.
That one? Double weapon?
It should have like an axe and a sword.
Axe and sword, and another one.
One
Reasonable
with
protection. Yeah, reasonable protection. Again, a double weapon. So, yeah, you're right.
They used to get mostly the great swords, but then they changed it so that they mostly get the axes, and they have a minority of the great swords now.
Okay.
I believe the great swords are up to 2124, 2123. They're both okay protection.
Here's a great sword.
One of them has 16 protection, which is very respectable.
Yeah, this one here. 16 protection. Just checking. And 16 protection, a great sword. Still got very little hit points, but and all of them pretty low on the magic resistance, so they're always vulnerable to banish. Most people I talk to, if they're going to use death gems to create large amounts of troops, try to hang on for Pale Riders if they can. And it's partly because most Death Nations, if we just move the Mod Inspector out of the way again, most nations with death, typically one of their research rushes is going to be Enchantment 5. 3's not bad, Raised Skeletons is not bad. Yes, the reanimation ritual, absolutely. One of the in-battle reanimation spells says something about the long dead equipment is related to the corpses on the field. That may very well be true. Let's have a look.
That's the one that raises souls.
Oh, that's souls. Okay, so that's where is that darn thing? Animate dead. Well, those create soulless. And where's the other soulless one? Raise dead. I don't see it in. There's nothing here in the fluff text. Let's just look. Doesn't tell us. I'm not seeing the example where there's anything saying about its equipment. Unless there's another one. Yeah, and carrying reanimation is.
So if you look at the Solus itself, it will say recently deceased warriors unnaturally animated into a state of false life. Soulless warriors are armed with the weapons they died with, which implies that
Right.
Recently dead troops are going to have weapons that they have weapons and armor then. some random souls.
And that's kind of an interesting question. I'm not entirely sure if you cast Raise Dead in a battle, if you get your national soulless or you get whoever's died. I think you get the national for you. I don't think the game tracks the type of corpses. But I'm open to anybody who wants to test that.
So something that's very interesting is that there are soulless shamblers, but there are not long dead shamblers.
Sorry, I just had a cough and a sneeze build up. Yeah, well, Illwinter over time has kind of filled in some of these gaps where you can obviously see that they didn't really consider, broadening certain things. I know that over the generations of Dominions that I've played, the whole business of long dead and reanimation has gotten more interesting, I would say, with more choices, more selection, more interesting things. So anybody else got anything on the issue of particularly, various forms of undead that you can either ritual or use in battle? Is that Cherno?
It's negative.
Oh, this negative, yeah.
I will talk about giant nations as well. Yeah, nations, because for them this probably is the most useful.
Yeah, I'll bring the mod inspector back over. And we can have a look at some of the giant long dead. But I guess the question is still, there's some of the Rephaites. He's got a lot of hit points. Really high damage. But that guy's only a fist. This guy's pretty good. And we go from there. We're up to protection 12. Now that's quite a lot of hit points for long dead. So yes, you've basically said, roughly put, that the value of the reanimation spell is going to seriously be higher if you've got specialty national long dead that make it better. And I think if I remember right, these guys, I don't think you can reanimate these guys. They're crazy good. The Partholonians?
Yeah. The Partholonians you can get.
No, the only way I know you can get them is national only spells. And mostly I've only seen them in Dominions Enhanced. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. I'm just scrolling through here for here's another long dead giant. So that's the Utgard, Jotun, Midgard bunch. Those are really good. And Prince Bay. Now I don't know if you get these, but these guys, I'm assuming that might be Ermer. That's not too shabby. They got a little more hit points, some protection, and a big ass tower shield, although it's rotten. But javelins, so I'm not really sure who can reanimate those. You got the Triarius too. So, there are quite a few various options. Sati can get some slaves. Yeah, Sati gets some. They're not really showing up here. Let me look at them. Where are the Satician? There we go. So that's pretty bare bones, just a spear. These guys are decent. I'm not seeing the lizards. That is definitely, changes up the calculation on it, reanimation. The ritual spell, like when you actually are spending your gems to do it. So we've kind of covered an awful lot of the low-level reanimation or summoning options. What about some of the more expensive and more elite ones? One of the first ones I can think of is if we go to enchantment, behemoths. I'm always really torn about behemoths. Anybody got any personal experience with behemoths?
So I only ever tried to use them once.
Okay, how did it
The
go?
strategy that I used was I found air mages as middle-aged statists, so I
Okay.
put body ethereal and gift of flight on them,
Okay.
and then I flew one to the back of the enemy army, and they happened to have a holy furry priest standing directly adjacent to where he landed, and they had a nature banishment, so they insta-killed it with 999 damage.
Wow. So there you go.
And I have never used it.
Well,
I had some success with a newbie game as Disciple Ashadil.
mhm.
And of course, you get regeneration and haste for undead. That's the only way I can think of that would make them halfway decent, is if you could layer those kinds of spells on them.
Yeah, I have a problem with the cost. 7 each and death gems. I just don't think, and mage time, you know, one per cast. You got to use a death 3 mage to get them. And I definitely don't like Ziz. I think Ziz are really pretty awful. They're cheaper, but like most very, very large flyers, they're just going to be killed. I suppose you could argue you could fear stack them,
Yeah.
and they're storm flying, so those two things make for a certain niche situation. If you
They
could,
have cold or a 10, which is pretty high. They have pretty solid resistance.
they do. So an argument for using them could be, say, 5 bodyguards on a flying thug. If you had a,
Actually, how much siege strength is that? They're flying with 20 strength and a siege bonus of 10 for 4 gems.
that's a
Not
lot.
that bad.
That's quite a lot. So if you wanted patrollers or siegers, you could afford the spare undead command. But I don't know what you'd use for a commander if you wanted to use them as a bodyguard and attack rear. You could use a devil, but then you'd have to give it cold resist. You could, I guess, put flying boots on a Bane Lord. There aren't a lot of options for undead flying commanders that don't cost a fortune. So I don't know. Just looking at them now, I can see various sort of specialty uses for Ziz. Better than Behemoth, I think.
I mean, that's not saying much.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. And I mean, and personally, there's just so many good things you could do with Death Gems. I mean, the number one thing I do with Death Gems, I consider this, I consider the Skull Staff overall the most efficient item, or the most efficient way to use Death Gems pretty much in the whole game.
It's
Doesn't-
good, yeah.
It doesn't mean you
Personally,
should limit yourself to the Skull Staff. I'm not saying that. It's just that it's very cost effective.
Right.
So Dis, you or was that Lego had a comment on the Skull
That
Staff?
was Jackal.
That was Jackalor. Hey Jack,
Yeah.
good to see you. Good to see
I
you. Glad
personally
you dropped
prefer
in.
Oh, yeah. I personally prefer whites over skull staffs, but I can see the draw.
I like whites. I like whites a lot.
The
They're
issue they have is they got the cold aura, so they don't mesh well with normal troops.
no. Well, we were talking before you came about mixing whites and ogres is a good synergy.
What?
Whites with ogres. If you have
why?
earth, because the ogres have. I used them in an example. I couldn't find it to block a gate, and the ogres were there to soak damage, just as extra meat,
You get the cold resistance
because they have the cold resistance.
And not care.
and
Ogres
it's
don't have cold resistance. Do you mean Yetis?
no ogres. Ogres have cold 5.
No, it's not really.
The cheap ogres.
But they don't have cold resistance. Though.
Yeah, they do.
Yes,
Yeah,
they do.
yeah, they do.
Let me check the inspector, because I swore they didn't.
No, totally. It's right
No,
here.
it's not up on the inspector.
Yeah, we just had them up. I'll put them up again.
I must have missed it entirely. I thought ogres were like basically big humans.
They are, but there are a lot of hit points for the gem cost if you just need hit points.
A fun thing to look for the ogres is their net pot makes them actually be the same as wearing scale now.
Mhm. Yep. And they're only size 3 instead of 4.
Yeah, they're actually really good. They just suffer from the fact that they need earth gems and you can't get them anywhere else.
Well, we started kind of the topic on early game options, like up to Conjuration 3 or Enchant 3. We're kind of moving on now to, whoops, wrong thing I'm moving. We're kind of moving on now to a little more higher level options. So that's how we got into the Behemoths and Ziz, things that,
They do indeed have high cold resistance. Did not know this.
yeah. Well, that's why, because we also talked about whites. I mean, clearly, when you get to Conjuration 9, this is a very cost-effective spell, Legion of Whites. I prefer it over
it's like the
Tartarians.
best spell, one of the best spells in the game, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, ritual in the game.
A lot of people like Tartarians, but I find Tartarians very, very frustrating.
I mean, unless you've got Gift of Health up, you're still burning lots of gems.
Yep. And 25% insane just is really annoying.
It's annoying, yeah.
It's not game ending or anything, it's just irritating.
Until that one moment where he's scripted to cast a crucial buff, doesn't move, and your entire army gets stat wiped.
Well, and that's the reason why one of the things I find with Tartarians, if you're using them as battle magi, I try to limit them to defensive use. So even if they're crazy, they'll still do their script.
Fair.
Just be sure they're already where you need them in case they go crazy.
Yep.
But the other pain with Shattered Soul is, let's say you've taken a Air or Cyclops, you Cloud Trapezed it as a super combatant, and then it goes crazy and doesn't get the heck out of there before somebody comes and wipes it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
they're,
If you're gonna use Tartarians, you should really just target them rather than SC them.
well, my two favorite of the top end death spells are Ghost Riders and Legion.
What does Ghost Riders do again? Is that just...
It's a remote attack.
Horseman?
It's a remote attack with the Wraith Lord and Pale Riders. But the important thing is that they are neutral flag. So you can use it to hit somebody on top of your own sieged fort.
Ah.
There's very few remote spells that don't end up inside your fort. This one and Horrors, I think, are the only two reliable ones.
Phantasmal attack.
Yes. So there's very few options if you want to try to burn gems or damage a sieging force before it storms. There's not a lot of options, and that's one of them.
Mhm.
But in terms of just creating top-end, super tough troops that buff like crazy, Legion of Whites is a very efficient spell. We could talk about a combo I've used, which is 1 Bane and 3 Whites. No, not quite 3. A Bane or a Bane Lord. And you need to work with, if we switch out here. So this is a technique I've used. You want to watch the size issues. So Bane Lord's a size 2.
Bane Lords are Bane.
Banes are size 2. Bane Lords are size 3. So a combination you could do is 1 Bane with 2 Whites to fill a square. That's 3 Chill Auras. you can put a cheap weapon on the Banelord, such as snake pebble staff, stick.
Snake bladder staff.
Snake bladder staff, sorry.
Stick,
yeah. Anyways, well, here, we'll just show it. That's easier. So this is a way to take a fairly, and personally for this one, I prefer the Bane for the lower cost and the smaller size. And so what you're doing is you're grabbing some whites. Just the basic white spell. And so you're stuffing 63 hit points per square, 3 chill auras, and depending on what you choose to use as a little bit of gear on the Bane, you can use a snake bladder stick and maybe a frostbrand, or that with, say, a dagger. And the additional 2 whites spread the damage off the Bane, reduce the harassment penalty for multi-attacks, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. You know, Banelords do suffer a lot from the fact that they require death 4.
Yes.
And they require a lot of gear to be good.
Yes. And they just aren't as good as they used to be. And they cost over twice as much, right?
Yeah.
So...
I mean, you need like a vine shield and a firebrand probably. And
probably.
You might be able to take PD with that, but
yeah.
Even then.
Whereas for significantly fewer gems, a Bane and a couple whites.
Isn't a summon whites like 20 gems?
20 for 5. So they're 5 each.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably, you might be better off just getting 3 Banes.
Yeah, I'd honestly argue that you was getting 3 Banes.
Yeah, because that's just a few more gems.
It's 3 more
Except
gems,
that the Banes won't necessarily stay together in the square, whereas 2 whites on bodyguard will stay in the square.
True.
You know, that's kind of the idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
if
so...
fighting PD, you can just have them placed for you and then hold ×5 and then they stay together and probably get hit by whatever's the PD.
I think the most of the cases where I've used this idea with the Bane with 2 whites has been as army support thugs on the flank. But it's not, you know, the most amazing. Now, if we want to talk about another summon I happen to be very fond of in the early game, and we'll jump back here, it's the plain old Black Servant. It's not that the Black Servant does anything spectacularly amazing, but it's got a couple... Why am I not showing it here? Come on, black. There it is. It's got a couple things that I think make it worth getting, depending on your situation. It's a scout with really high stealth, and it's amphibious. So I have definitely purchased them for the specific purpose of scouting local ponds or local water as a land nation. The other one is, in emergency situations, or to sneak out of your own fort under siege, I've put an Amulet of the Dead on a Black Servant. And that can kill a small amount of PD. So, you know, you're looking at 10 gems to give you something that can maybe throw a guy off, an opponent. He's sieging your fort, and you can sneak it out, take something behind him, maybe distract him. It's a bit of a psychological maneuver. But it's in the oddball tricks that sometimes you use. And sometimes, well, for example, water nations, there's no independent scouts in the water, which is sad. I think there should be. So you're stuck with a choice of either using fort turns, or you can get some black servants to get yourself some scouts.
I hear Cherno really likes black servants.
Does he?
Yeah, he mentioned that they have a spirit site, so they can see elves in nearby provinces.
Oh, good point. Good point. Not something I considered. Let's just jump back there. That's pretty significant. Yeah, spirit sight. Excellent. Excellent point. And they're not very expensive. And of course, if by chance you're somebody who likes it, you could give them a Bane Venom charm. They're one of the few things that works with.
Please, don't.
Oh, come on.
speak against it.
Absolutely. The wonders of Bane Venom charms.
Oh my fucking god! Fuck being venom.
Well, I had a game where I very successfully used Bane Venom charms. And it wasn't because they killed anything. It was because the player I sent them against got all befuddled and confused and ran around backwards with his armies trying to patrol them out and chased them all over the place. And I just kept running them around. So it was psychological warfare.
You can never catch someone unless they're moving the province you're patrolling in.
Well, and yeah, but, you know, so using them to try to kill magi and troops and stuff by disease and kill population isn't really what they're, in my opinion, good for. What they're good for is if somebody gets caught up in it and starts chasing them around, you can keep his armies from doing something more useful. So hopefully the lesson to anybody listening is if you see diseases happening in your provinces, don't waste a lot of time trying to chase it down, just ignore it. Or if you're going to patrol it, do it with something really cheap that you don't care. So that's sort of
Does
my...
anyone on Blitz?
Pardon me?
Does anyone on a Blitz?
I can't. I promised I'd stream for another hour. And I haven't been blitzing at all lately. I think you remember I tried streaming and blitzing, and it didn't work well for me. It's too tiring.
There.
Well, it's hard to keep up the text chat and the blitz and getting your turns done. So they don't fit very well. But anybody else sitting here, are you going to go down to Clockwork to blitz there, Jackalor?
Probably.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna Blitz.
So if anybody wants to join in on that. Harvester of Sorrows in your capital. Well, one turn of Harvester of Sorrows isn't going to hurt you too bad there, Crows and Lions. And just get it the heck out. It's an interesting summon. I haven't used one in an awfully long time. They really don't thug very well, and they cost a lot.
Yeah, I've used Harvesters of Sorrows. They're garbage. They really are. They don't kill enough. You're better off spending Black Servants and Bane Venom Charms if you want to kill stuff with them.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah. No, I think they're... What's the price now? They're not... Why is it not showing up?
It's 10 gems for the Bane Venom, 7 gems for the Black... wait, is it 7 gems for Black Servant or is it 4?
The Black Servant?
Yeah. Or is it 5?
5. Yeah, but the Harvester's 20. It has...
Yeah, you pay 5 less gems to... 5 more gems to have something that flies.
Actually,
And
yeah.
that's about it.
No more than that, because if you put a Bane Venom on... Oh, I see, yeah. No, you're right.
That's actually, if you put a Bane Venom on a Harvester, wouldn't that be 15 pop per turn?
I don't know.
15%?
I don't know if it would
no,
stack.
It's half, so it's more like 7.5%.
Yeah. They're...
It's still not something you want floating around your camp.
It's also Conjuration
It's going to
7.
last there at most, it's going to be there for like a turn before you have to run away because they
Yeah.
go on their cap.
Yeah. I don't...
Unless you give them, do they have boot sauce? They don't. Never mind.
No. No, they've got hands and miscellaneous, so... But no magic to buff. I think if you're up at Conjuration 7, if we just get rid of this and look at Death Gems and what we can do at Conjuration 7, you know, you've got Wraith Lords, you've got Liches, you got Mound Fiends, Ghosts. Now, Ghosts, if by chance you have a high death Pretender or something, the efficiency of summon Ghosts goes up really fast due to the extra, you know, 1/2 per level. The biggest use I can see of Ghosts that I've used them for is the ethereal to get through walls.
You can buff them with Iron Skin.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can buff them with probably lots of things.
Size 2, 20 HP, and like 15 fucking defense skill.
Yeah.
They take buffs really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
They also have life drain, which means that even if they take damage, they can pull it back up.
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
defeat it and then pull it
The best part is, however, they're
Pretty-
stealthy.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you could lead them with, say, a Spectre.
Mm-hmm.
Would be probably a good choice.
I mean, you could.
Or you could even just use like a black servant with a
Yeah,
one
I
hand.
mean,
Yeah, you could give a Black Servant what's that cheap rod?
Crown of Bones, I think.
That's expensive. There's that cheap rod. Rod of Death, isn't it?
What of the Leper King, you mean?
This thing. Yeah, that thing's really cheap and gives you 50 undead. So
Just so you're aware, it can still show you the minions.
Oh, son of a gun. Sorry, this is kind of tricky. Oh yeah, no, Divinions is in the background, right?
The
No,
Twitch
it's in
stream
the
is
foreground.
showing both, but
So he's streaming
Oh.
on Twitch.
I'm streaming on
Discord
Twitch,
is only
Jackalor.
Oh, he's streaming on Twitch.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can do a Rod of the Leper King, or Skull Talisman. What was that other one you were talking about?
Amulet of the Dead.
Amulet of the Dead works too.
Yeah,
Any of the, and then you can just raid with like 4 or 5 ghosts, and you should be fine.
yeah, that's a good combo. It's a very good combo.
And you can have the
Oh, yeah.
animate skeleton, because why not?
Sure. Crows and Lions. Some of the people talking, we've met up on the Dominion's Nexus Discord, and that's where we're doing the voice. So they can see my Dominions there, but I can't do this fancy picture-in-picture over there. So they're seeing my Dominions game, but not seeing the Mod Inspector. Yeah, I got more fancy options with my little bit more powerful streaming software than I have just playing with Discord.
you're talking about using a lot of the Leper King simply for the leadership bonus, yeah.
This was just for the specific example of I got some ghosts, I want to sneak them around. What's the cheapest way to do it? I think the suggestion is really good. A Black Servant with some item that gives a little bit of undead command. So something cheap. I wouldn't use the crown, it's just too expensive.
So I just ran into an interesting bug. I don't want to take us too far off topic, so do you mind if I bring it up real quick?
Not
to
at
see
all.
If anybody else has run into it before?
Not at all.
So in one of my games, just recently, the turn rolled, and you have the lovely message from host. This player has received an unexplainable amount of gold.
Oh, the cheat message. Okay.
So the player in question is me, and obviously I did not cheat. And what I believe happened is one of my forts, I had started construction of a fortress on a palisade,
Okay.
which is 300 gold. But the fortress had gotten put under siege a couple times, and then I was going to finish the fort construction later. It didn't get taken. So I didn't
Okay, as long as it didn't get taken, that stays in the queue.
push
Yeah.
the people off. But the same turn that I get the message, I have cheated 300 gold into my bank account.
Right.
Whatever. I also have
Did
to
it tell you the
redo
amount?
The construction. Yes, 300 gold exactly.
Really?
Yes, and then the fortress, usually it would say 2 months left.
Yeah.
Right, 0 gold because you already
Yeah.
spent the gold, you just have to finish building it. But now I would have to spend the gold again to restart construction.
Really? But you never lost the original fort.
That is correct.
That sounds like a bug. That definitely sounds like a bug. I've not
Yes,
seen
it
that
is.
before.
But the weird thing is, it's not like the bug didn't turn up the turn I pushed them off of my fort. It's like
Really?
1 or 2 turns after that.
And the turn it happened, there was nobody sieging.
Yeah, there's nobody on there, no events this turn, I don't believe.
That definitely sounds buggy. The only other case recently where I've seen that message show up was that short time when we had the bug with if you canceled recruitment under siege because there was a bug that the recruitment didn't get canceled when you got sieged. You could delete that recruitment, get the gold, close the game, open the game again, delete it again, close the game, open the game again, delete it again for infinite gold. That was in March.
Yes, this is
But that's,
not that situation.
no, it's not, but it sounds like it might be related to something funny with the cancellation of queues. In your case, queuing of construction rather than queuing of recruitment. So it might actually be related and nobody's noticed it before. Because the problem with that one was another change to something I can't remember affected the queuing system of recruitment. And this sounds to me like using a similar part of the code for queuing construction. I would definitely post this to the bug thread and ask Il Winter.
Right, I'm gonna have to probably make a copy of the save then too.
Yeah, the other person to ask is ask Loggy and see if you can look through your log. He's the best log driller I know. Pencils also is good with tools like grep. Which server is it hosted on? You still there, Rofsy?
Yeah, sorry, my Discord lagged for a second. It's
Oh.
on a Lucid server.
On Lucid's?
It's the own game.
Well, type your preferences in the game channel and see the name of the server with the bot. Like if it's Laxmi or Chaco. Because the server owner, which is usually Pencils, might be able to access the log for it and help you troubleshoot it.
It's on local.
It says local?
Yeah, I forget who runs local.
I'm not sure, but you could just post a question and Lucid would know, probably, if it's on his server. But I think the Clockwork bot that everybody's using just bounces to whichever of the servers has the most room. What I mean is I don't think that Lucid's Discord specifically uses certain of the bot servers. Because you know that the bot and the servers running the game are a different thing. And they're not physically in the same place.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, good grief.
uh,
I just got a spammer found me
oh.
in Twitch. I'll deal with that later. This grows anymore, I might have to get a volunteer modder. Or mod. Captain Pennyworth, welcome.
Thanks.
Alright, so have we kind of covered that, Rob? Yeah, I've met Captain
Yeah,
Pennyworth
that's fine.
before.
I'll do a bug report and figure it out.
Yeah, and maybe try either Pencils or Loggy. I don't know much more. I haven't seen that one before, but I'm just kind of going off tidbits of memory of things I remember and where it might tie into. So does anybody have any particular summons they want to review. Lego Warrior, did you come back? Nope. He's working.
Yes, there is one summon.
Sure.
Well, technically two. It's two different summons that have a whole branches of summons. Mikelian / Raghan summon Yata and summon.
So nationals.
Yeah, the national one.
So I should open up which age of Calum? Any?
Any age or Raga.
Okay, or Raga. Okay, let me open up a Calum. I'll go middle, just as generic. And
Okay. Celestial Jazad would be
the Jazad. Yeah.
Yazad. Y A A.
Yep.
Z A D.
Gotcha. I've used them in the past, so where are they here? What spells?
Conjuration
Nationals.
6 for both of them.
That's not national. Come on. I'll just turn this off.
Where's the link to your stream?
There we are. Just a second. It should be in the
I
voice
found it in
text
your
just
profile.
above. Yep. Yazadas. The Yazad. These guys. You can see it once you go over to Twitch. You'll see it, but I've got it open
I
on
can't
the.
see yet. I'm not in the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's loading.
Yeah, no problem.
No, these that's the troop version. It's the Celestial Yazad you're looking for.
The commander.
Yes, the commander.
This guy. And any one of them. All right.
No, I'm fine with just talking about the Yazad too because they're
Mhm.
nice. Well, they would be nice if they weren't so goddamn expensive.
Well, 15 pearls for 6. That's very comparable to Gandharvas. For pearl
They're
summons.
also size 3 as Gandharvas, except their stats are much worse.
Yeah, but at least they've got storm flying
Fair.
and they can fly. You know, those are. I mean, you usually end up paying for those. But I'm just saying that. I mean, we were talking earlier today before I started streaming that I still think most summons that use astral pearls are overpriced because most of the prices are the same as they were in Dominions 3 when we could make as many clams as we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think most of the pearl summons, because to me pearls are worth, you know, at least a 2 to 3 ratio to other gems, and maybe 1 to 2 ratio depending. So I think that pearl summons should be discounted by about 30% across the board.
Yeah. I mean, fucking Ether Lords.
Yeah.
90 gems.
They're a great, or the other option with Ether Lords, and I know D's done it, is split the troops from the mage, and then you've got
definitely.
and make the troop summon, you know, not so many, but a little easier to do, because they're pretty handy. I mean, those Ether Warriors, there's definitely free Moonblades. It's no joke.
And they're ethereal too. The issue is they're so goddamn expensive.
Well, whoever stockpiles 90 pearls and hasn't figured out something better to do with it. I know I don't sit around with 90 pearls.
Yeah.
And there's so many things you need. If you're an astral nation that has enough astral magic to cast that sort of thing, you need skull caps, you need crystal coins, you need penetration gear. You know, there's so many things, and you need mind hunts, and you need just so many critical uses.
Teleport.
Exactly. So summoning, I just find that unless I'm a bit desperate, I don't summon troops with pearls. So what's your question on these celestial Yazads?
You think
Or
Kellam
review.
actually wants to summon them? They're very expensive, Conjuration 6, and you don't get the pads except with where the hero is hero, or going through a pretender, or going through the Yata instead.
And it's random which one you get, right?
Yes, you're random. And none
Yeah,
of
so
them-
the air ones you really don't need. The fire ones,
You don't have natural access to fire
No.
higher than fire 1. No.
No,
So
but
therefore 1 is useful for casting Eternal Fire, and that's about it.
but statistically, you're gonna have to spend a lot of pearls to get the one you want.
My favorite, honestly, is the Yazad of Earth.
Yes, I can see
You
that.
have nothing in that. You have none of those paths nationally, and they're all good paths.
Yeah. Well, not only that, Air Earth is a great cross path.
Earth?
Sorry, Earth's astral. Earth nature is a good cross path. They can make their own moonvine bracelets, but since you only have a 1 in 6 chance of getting the one you want, that's rough. I would really be questioning if I could afford to cast those. Very much so. Now, what about this Fervavsi?
It's just an astral air mage.
Yeah, so, and it's not enough hit points to really be a good thug or anything. The Ameshtas,
Are unique, completely. That's about
yeah,
all that can be.
but again, you got the same kind of issue,
There's so many of them.
and some of them are really good, some are not. It's a tough call. Most of the time, if I was running around as Calum, I'd be putting what gems I have to things that got me powered now, not later. Or not, yeah. I guess my thoughts on that have a lot to do with any kind of summons that are effectively random in whether or not they do you good are a lot lower value than a summon where I know what I'm going to get. And we were talking about that before you came in, about the whole idea of elemental royalty. They're good, but if you fail to summon it because somebody else already has it, you just wasted 50 gems that you could have done better things with. Whereas things like a fairy queen, or a forest troll king, or a troll king, or a sea troll king, you know you're going to get it. You know exactly what you're going to get for your gems. So that's tends to be where how do you text comment in the Twitch, how do you tend to spend your gems in the first year or two? Most of the time I try not to spend too many, and usually I will be looking at small bits of forging, either trinkets or construction too, that give me something really useful. If I've got like a titan or an awake monster, and maybe not really thinking about the specifics of what's available, but if we jump back to the mod inspector, the topic is summons basically, but you can't really talk about summons without talking about, in the early game, where might I choose to spend my gems. And so there's a few of the early gem summoning items that are forged items that are really useful in the early game. A couple of them, there's even a couple that are boosters, right? Well, very few. So I don't know, examples, like if you're an astral nation and you happen to have water nature, a clam of pearls is a very useful thing, even early. So it's a place I might spend.
Another thing is that astral nations can very easily spend pearls early because power of the spheres
Yes.
can be able for them to cast spells that they otherwise don't have access to very early, before they have, communions of any size.
Well,
So that can be a good way for them to spend stuff effectively.
and any elemental spell, even the little elementals in the early game, can be worth the gem. Little elementals don't hold up well later, but so using gems to summon elementals in battle is a valid thing from very early.
I mean, honestly, the air elemental is kind of overlooked for the lesser version because it still does the same damage as the big one if it can't trample.
Well-
It doesn't do the same damage.
Yes, they both have the exact same damage on their lightning sword.
Oh, on the lightning, I'm sorry. I thought you meant trample damage.
If they can't trample, they deal the same damage. So against size 6 enemies, like, Titans, the lesser elemental is better.
Yeah. And, well, and the other thing is a lot of nations have air 2, that are air nations have air 2 magi, but you're not going to be able to put up a storm, so you're going to spend 3 gens a pop, trying to summon a big elemental. That gets expensive pretty quick. You can do it, but it adds up pretty quick. But absolutely, from in the early game, elementals are very solid. Any of them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're having trouble spending gems or don't want to spend gems on elementals, you can always just cast, for example, for Earth, you can just spend the gem for an E1, cast summon Earth power into casting with the gem buffs.
Yes, absolutely. And that's another example of early game use of gems is path boosting. Lots of cases for path boosting options. So,
And all of a sudden your E1 can cast fucking Legions of Steel, and all of a sudden your troops are actually not dying.
Crows and Lions just made a good comment in the text. He's trying to get over his tendency to turtle all his magi into research. Well, in my opinion, it's nice if you don't have to use magi for expansion. Because there are some strategies, particularly the point buffing strategy where you send magi out to help you expand. There's a big cost involved there. It's viable. I did another stream on it, and I do question the strategy pretty seriously, but it is an option. Where you probably have no choice but to bring out your magi is if you get attacked or you are rushing. And then leaving them inside their fort, but letting your opponent rampage your lands doesn't make any sense. Definitely send them out. Somebody else, go ahead and talk for a second. I have to go to the washroom.
As far as lab rats are concerned, personally, I don't spend gems on or gold on lab rats because generally it means they aren't doing anything except being lab rats. Like, unless they're my best mage for combat, I try to recruit mages that are actually useful for combat, so that when they when I am done researching for the first few goals, I can in an emergency bring them all out and actually fight with them.
It depends heavily on the nation as well.
Oh yes, definitely.
Obviously, somebody like Arco, they have their lab rat mages, their workhorse mage as well. So they don't mind massing them and sitting them in the lab because as soon as it's time to leave the lab, they're all pretty much useful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm mostly thinking of stuff like making the F1 or other X1 mages is generally not a good idea unless you know they give something that you really want.
If you could take Saba, for example, I wouldn't have that sword.
B1 and S1 are basically one of the few mages I would actually recruit as X1, unless they have something else they bring to the table.
Well, Nature 1 is fine. Fire 1, if you don't have any other form of higher level fire, is also fine.
I could think of
Okay.
I can think of an example of where they're useful. I'm going to quickly go over to it. If we look at Agartha, this is one I've used, and national only units, and then recruitable. Where is he? Not the Earth Reader, the little cheap guy. Who's that little cheap guy? engraver.
Yeah,
So
the
this
engraver has
guy-
the benefit of having a research bonus.
Well, there's that, but more importantly, oh no, I'm sorry, this one doesn't work. I thought they were the ones that had magic leader. I guess you're stuck with. No, that wasn't a good example. I was thinking that they had magic leader and you could use them to run a handful of magma children around, but it doesn't work. You got to go with earth readers. So
I think that's MA Agartha.
could be.
They get the E1 Earth Reader.
With some leadership.
I have to check, but like MA Agartha has interesting names.
Yeah, no. Oh, this is the guy. Yeah, magic leader 15, base leader 40, sacred. So these guys, the middle age, that is the case where I used them. Was to run raiding squads of 8 to 15 magma children just to annoy your opponent.
Mhm.
So there's an example of an E1 with a secondary use. His magic isn't really the important factor.
Oh, Crows and Lions? Generally, you shouldn't be using the site search spells unless you have a path access, but only on like 1 or 2 mages. So, like, you get a hero with Astral Tree. You probably don't want to send them out site searching because they might be killed. So you could have them cast Arcane Probing.
Yeah, the later it goes in the game, the more likely I am to use remote site searching as well. Like if
Yes,
you take over
absolutely.
We were talking about early.
Yeah,
Yeah, late on in the game, I definitely use remote site searching because raiding is such a pain that
Yes.
you really can't afford to send mages out to be targets.
If you mean manual site searching early in the game, and how do you balance that versus having people research? So, generally speaking, most nations have a couple mages that are gonna have a little bit higher paths than their primary paths. There are some nations that are pretty spread, but generally you would, as you're making extra forts and scaling up your research, you would have the people maybe who go around and, like let's say that you have 5 or 6 paths and you have a few mages that can get up to level 2 in a few of those paths. You would wait for those randoms or whatever, and you would site search with them. And then while they're going out site searching, you can also do stuff like put up labs, etc., etc. So that can be kind of like how those are used. You're gonna move mages around, right, to make labs in the first place, so you might as well move the mages that you're gonna site search with as well.
Yeah, I just because you were going well on the topic, kind of my rule of thumb is anytime I have a 3-path mage with 1 path 3, hopefully a 2nd path 2, off they go manually searching. 2-path mages as well. Like recently, I had a Pangaea game, so I sent my pans out. They've had Earth 2, Nature 3, and that's very valid for manual searching. When it comes to remote searching, I use a couple things to consider it. One, look at the province. If it has 1 or 2 sites, it's low priority. If it's got no sites, then remote search it. If it's got 1 site, not bad. But once you've found 2 sites in a province, the chances of finding more sites geometrically drops. Just due to the way that...
No, go ahead.
Well, and the exception is thrones, because frequently they are tagged in the map as many sites, so they can have up to 8 sites. That's not always the case. It's map dependent, but... So...
And then I had something I was going to add is that there's some, as an example, with death magic specifically, let's say your nation has a single death 2 mage, right? That's all the death access you have,
Yes.
for whatever reason. You summon a revenant and start
Yes.
revenant out to manually site search. You take your 3 or 4 death gems a turn that you found randomly over the course of the game so far, and every turn he casts forget what it's called.
Dark
knowledge.
Dark knowledge.
Dark knowledge instead
That
of
is-
manually site searching, and then
Yes.
that way you site search your way through all of your land eventually. With revenants are okay, but they're otherwise fairly low value mages, right?
Yes.
But because they can site search for dark knowledge, they can site search your entire land up to the level you want. And you might do the same thing with astral indies.
Yeah.
Since
Well,
we
dark-
usually are on the astral level 1.
Dark knowledge is a funny one. It's the most expensive remote search. But on the other hand, there's a pile of nations that might happen to luck out either a hero or a lucky random. And again, I'll kind of bring up my Pangea game. In that game, I happened to luck out and get a single pan with Death 1. And then I bought from an ally a Skull Stave, and I made a Revenant. And Dark Knowledge is exactly how I did it. So, and another example is I've had a number of games with either Bandarlog or Patala or Kalesa where I've gotten a Death 2 or Death 1 hero. And so, definitely Dark Knowledge.
And that's also how Joman site searches into death. They get Bakanekos, which are a nature summon, and they have a 50% chance to have death magic, and then you dark knowledge with
Right.
those to find all your death signs.
Yeah, Death is probably the most common remote search I use. But there's some other ones. A remote search I always use is Voice of Tiamat, because I consider
yes.
it very cost effective.
That's amazing.
hmm You know, I almost always earn, I would say on average, I get 2 gems a turn for every 8 I spend. So that's only a 4-turn payback. And then along with that, sometimes it becomes most efficient. I mean, so many of the nations in the water have water with some other sorcery path. So it's not particularly all that effective to manually search, partly because it's so slow to move in the water.
Mhm.
So sometimes you're better off using the sorcery remotes, Astral Probing and Dark Knowledge and Harrowspecs.
Crows and Lions, I'll note that for Wells of Pestilence, they spread death scales, so you can almost always know there's a Wells of Pestilence in a province if it has death scales. There are very few non-death sites that provide death scales, and usually they're already revealed when you get to find them.
I think there's only the one in its nature.
Yeah, it's Dying Forest.
Yeah. So if you see unexpected death scales,
Scale from the province, just send it in a Dark Knowledge there, and you'll know if there's a Well of Pestilence or not.
yeah. Or if you happen to have found it because somebody walked through it and got a disease. That happened to me.
Yeah.
What
But usually I tend to avoid
Somebody,
walking through death scale provinces when they're early game.
somebody else had another question. Captain Pennyworth?
When you're just site searching for Well of Pestilence, what level does your death mage have to be?
3.
One to get up?
Oh,
3.
Pennyworth, you've asked about Barghast. Okay.
Yeah.
I have an example. It's a current game. I'll show you on my... I'm running a test game for Femoria due to the tournament game. So let me move.
Yeah, Captain Pennyworth. It is Death 3, level 3, and you need to find a Well of Pestilence.
Right.
Which is very annoying, as most mages, national mages, only cap out at Death 2.
So, I've got a Femoria game, and my opponent is Therados. We're at war. I can't see any reason to get these Barghests right now. So let me bring them over with the mod inspector. That's not it. Come on.
Vargas are kind of trash.
I have problems with them. I'll tell you that. The cost looks good. 9 for 7 looks pretty good. But let's change out to Femoria here. And national only spells. Get rid of the search. So we could start first with the Black Dogs. We'll close a bunch of other things. So what you're going to get here is a single bite, size 2, dark power. That's good, but not until you've got darkness. Iron vulnerability, not great. The stealth, okay, but unless you're planning to lead them and you bought some Numidian champions out of your capital, you got very few options to lead these guys. So I couldn't see a use for them. I just thought they're just gonna melt. They're just gonna up and die. With a protection 4, they don't have ethereal. So if you go to the Barghasts, you got stealthy again, you got the dark power, but that doesn't help you. Curse attacker, well, who cares if you curse some troops? 28 hit points, not bad. Protection's poor. Magic resist and morale are good. Decent attack skill. And a venomous bite. So, if you were in a situation where somehow or other you needed a way to apply a bunch of poison that you couldn't otherwise do, although Femoria has a pretty good chance of heroes to let you put up foul vapors.
Well, aren't Barghasts sacred?
No.
No.
Oh,
Barghasts
yes, they are.
Black Dog are.
Yeah, Barghasts are
Oh, they are.
sacred.
No, yeah, it's Barghasts are sacred.
I guess that'll
Each
depend
one
then on
is
your
hero.
bless.
Yeah. I mean, as far as about Barghasts go, think of them as dudes, as giants in leather cuirasses. That's how good they are at being a fighting. Because they
Yeah.
have like a giant's spear in their hands.
Yeah. So what's the damage? They're strength 16 with the
18
damage 18 damage. So they're kind of comparable to maybe city lizards.
No, they have 16. They have 18 damage. That's more akin to a ardent spearman.
Well,
But they have
I was thinking
half
of, yeah, they're size 3. I was thinking of guys with tridents and stuff that hit fairly hard.
the lizard warriors
No,
are
about the same base.
also size 2.
If you have a magic weapon bless and the ability to cast darkness, how,
If you've got
how much
darkness,
value from one other than
if you got darkness ready, and you're going to
Darkness
be, that's going to change the, and you just brought this up. If I go back to my test game, I can show you what I'm trying to deal with. And that maybe I should be considering them now. Like I'm dealing with this kind of thing, 500 ghosts. I'm not going to kill wads of ghosts with Barghasts. So all they're going to be for me is, because the venom's useless, so all they're going to be for me is a front line of regenerate. I've got regen bless, you can see here. So all they're going to be to me is something similar to my unmarked, but not really as good.
Yeah, unmarked have shields and actual protection.
And they can repel, and so on.
Yep.
Plus the other thing
Yeah,
I've been
but
doing,
damage.
yeah, the other thing I've been doing is it's a little hard to see here. Let's take half of these guys away. There we go. I've been alternating my recruitment so that I've got a Numidian and an unmarked in each square. So that's actually, 2 attacks per square. 1 is magic, plus some javelins. I'm not really sure how Barghasts will fit in with what I've got in a useful way. If you had a different bless, might change it up.
I mean, the issue is that they're naked.
Well,
They don't have any armor, so they
No.
have to rely on killing everything before they die.
yeah, and you haven't got a whole heck of a lot of buffing for protection. Like I happen to have some,
If you have the darkness, they can rely on their high defense if the opponents
yeah,
don't have dark
Yeah.
vision.
yeah.
Yes, but at that point, you could have just taken the spirit side bless and.
But on the other
unmarked
hand-
would have been doing the same thing.
On the other hand, if I throw darkness up, I weaken my unmarked.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really synergize well. Now, corpse constructs are a pretty core element of Femoria. And the Barguests might synergize well. They're the same size. Although you can't mix them up because these are mindless. So they might synergize with using corpse constructs. The other one is, is there something you could do with them to use them with Morgans? But let's look at my options for spending my death gems. If we look at my lab, now this happens to have Lucid's temporary gem gens. So I want a lot of these because I'm in a Wailing Winds everywhere all the time. So that's going to burn death gems. These are doing me tremendous good, the horror helmets on kings, because the spectrals actually don't have great morale, so they run away. These Morrigan spears are really good on my kings. They're probably the best option I have because of the increased attack def, and the decay is kind of a secondary. And I'm making...
makes them really good, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm...
Life Drain's very good.
Well, I'm also soul vortexing, and I need some death gems for the D2 randoms to get them soul vortexing. So you look, I've got the option twice borning. If I've got a guy with a good heroic power eye twice born, that's 30 death gems a pop. Horror helms.
Cloud trapeze in and
Exactly.
somebody if they're not ghost but they're human.
So I just have so many important uses for death gems. In this game in particular, I have not been able to justify spending death gems on what are basically meat, a meat wall.
I need troops quickly.
Okay, if you need troops quickly, that's a different situation. Yeah,
And it's capillary recruitment for a lot of the good choices.
almost all of them.
Yeah.
Your other forts,
I mean, at that point, you might as well just summon whites.
yeah, you might be better off with whites.
Okay. Yeah.
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 If I
that's
might
better.
bring up an additional topic.
What's that?
Do you know which nation has the most national spells in the game? Including the most national summons?
Hello?
No, it's German.
Oh, okay.
Of course. Fair.
Let's take a look at that. See, I wasn't going to go too far
Yes,
into
the
nationals.
summons of every single path in the game, besides Blood Eye Wolf.
I wasn't going to go too far into national summons, but it's coming up and we've covered sort of core stuff. Oh yeah, look at that. And that's unmodded.
I need to step away, guys. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, no
Very
problem.
interesting.
Thanks for dropping in.
No problem, man.
Just
Thanks
to let
for
you know,
coming
I've scheduled to do this every day this time during the week.
Yeah. See ya.
See you guys. Bye.
How's our timing? Okay, so 12 minutes left, and then I'm gonna wind up. But here's your Joman. Yeah, that's a pile in almost every path, almost every cross path. You got a ton of great ways to use up any gems you got laying around.
Yeah, they're really good at sinking stuff, sinking gems into things.
Totally. Speaking of nature summons that I have considered in the past, these tigers are some of the better animals I've seen.
I think the Okami, if you look right next to them, the Okami are just better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 10
Right,
plus.
they're really similar. They have
Yeah.
less attack density,
And they're
but
not.
they have magic power and bodyguard, and they're not undisciplined.
They're not undisciplined. And
they're
they've got
stealthy,
proper magic resistance. Oh, they're way
fire
better.
resistance,
Yeah. No question about it.
snow, forest, and mountain survival. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're pretty good.
I've seen people use these Shuras before. It's been a while. But they're basically like a kind of extra power Bane.
Yeah, a little bit.
So I've seen them
They're
used
pretty
in the
close.
past.
I think it's just Do Banes have ethereal? I think it's kind of just a Banes.
Banes are not ethereal, and they don't have fear. That's two pretty big bonuses,
He's also floating, so
right?
he's
And a
immune to
second
fire
form,
effects.
right? Or are these the ones that are the second form?
No, since he's ethereal already, I don't think he
Yeah,
has a second.
no, not second form. I've seen them used. I don't play Joman hardly ever, but... And these guys, the Muginas, these are the cats, aren't they? Or the foxes?
No, the Kitsune are.
The Kitsune, that's what I'm thinking of.
They get you.
But they're
movement versus-
recruitable, aren't they?
The
No.
Mujina are the
Mugina are
Trash-
assassins.
trash
They're
pandas.
pretty.
Oh, they're
close.
badgers. Oh,
Yep.
okay. What's their They have a second shape, don't they?
The second shape is an assassin. It's a good.
Oh yeah, that's why I was thinking of them. Yeah. Well, Nature 2 in an assassin is excellent. Because you
Right,
can
and then
double
they have
swarm.
Magic power and fear as well.
Nice. Yeah.
If they wanted to, they could run up and whack people, but that's not
Yeah.
really
What are their randoms? Ooh, nice.
The randoms are okay.
They're good. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a little expensive.
But they're moss. You got moss body. You got liquid body.
Moss body, temper flash, personal regen, all
Yeah.
that fun stuff.
Yeah, that's a nice unit. No, Joman has some great
Who's
summons.
talking about now?
Mugina for Joman. Like just Joman national summons as interesting summons.
Mhm.
Now, which
Yeah,
are
so
the
if you're floating a ton of nature gems as Gelman, you probably are not playing the nation right, considering how
right?
much they can sink into nature summons.
Now these guys are their flying storm guys, right?
They have Karasu
The die-
Tengus and Konoha Tengus. The Karasu Tengus are actually better.
Yeah.
They just have better stats. They're 1-to-1 per gem, and you can summon them in batches of 3 for the Karasu or 5 for the Konoha.
And these guys have that
Unfortunately,
really long range single shot. I
like,
remember.
yeah, they're like budget storm demons that
Yeah.
are also sacred.
Yeah, I've seen them. Plus storm flying. Yeah. Very poor protection, but chances are you can
Yeah.
at least fog warriors.
Funny
Well,
thing,
Fog Warriors requires some work, unfortunately.
Okay.
I mean, the funny
Right.
thing about the Tengu, you get armored Tengu from casting contact die Tengu.
Yes, Contact Dai Tengu is expensive, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
looking
You
at
don't
that.
really care about the armored Tengu very much. You kind of wish that they could like subtract all of the cost from the Tengu fighter part of the spell and just give you the Dai Tengu for like 25 gems or
I
whatever.
mean, I totally pay for a Tengu warrior spell.
Well, the nice thing about the Dai Tengu is it's your only way to get to Air 3,
Mm,
really,
mm.
without taking it on your god.
Well, 55 gems for a high air caster
Yes, and
is
then
not bad.
they're also basically the only non-profit that you have that
Right.
really takes advantage of the fact that they have teaching sign.
Because
Which
air,
means they can
Mhm.
easily cast Fog Warriors.
well, air magic is one of the hardest to bootstrap into. You've really only got Fairy Queen.
You can cast Fairy Queen as German.
Yeah, and Air Queens, and that's it. I mean, there's no other good summonable air magi. Unless I'm forgetting something. I think you got nothing like Fire Spirit.
No, you don't have anything like the Fire Spirit.
Um,
I'm missing something.
You know, I personally find I
Magic.
frequently, sorry about the clunk, I frequently take Air 4 on a rainbow just to give the option of, you know, going up air if you're planning that you're going to want it, if you don't have it naturally.
Right. I think the Air 4, Blood 4 is fine on German because eventually it'll get you Robo the Magi pretty
Yep.
reliably, and then also lightning resistance is always useful, and then Blood
Yep.
Surge is always useful too. So
Yep.
I don't know. I find that works pretty well.
Cool.
But they have the really interesting summon. I think the most interesting one that they have overall is they have Summon Oni General,
Yes.
and that gets you Oni Shugo. And Oni Shugo gets you Wailing Winds and Wind of Death.
So I just typed a generic comment in the chat that very, very often for many, many nations, their national gem summons are far better than anything on the generic list. Because I can think of numerous examples. You know, if we pop this Jomon stuff out of the way, if we take a quick look at early and middle Agartha and their national summons, it's not resetting. Why is this thing not resetting? You silly thing. There we go.
Oh, Mayor.
Hey!
Hey, can I ask you to do an analysis? Like, I am really interested in your perspective of one aspect about a nation. And at some point, maybe not now, but I'd love to hear your thought on it.
Absolutely. So I have my list of questions for the next sessions. Which nation?
Okay. It's Naba. It's a question.
Naba. Oh God. Okay, yeah, I'll do my best. I've had piles of people talking to me about Naba.
If you mass up hints,
Okay.
which are the heat
Yeah.
for unseen ethereal guys.
Well,
With
I'm.
a 6 air gems for 6, I think that might become powerful. But
Sure.
I don't know how to like get into that or how to synergetically use that to snowball an advantage or create one. That is kind of what I was interested in. Your thoughts about that.
So the Hin, these guys. Okay, so I'm just kind of winding up. I like to shut down at 2 hours. I've put your question into my list, and I can't see. I just got to jump windows. Who's asking? Oh, Cherno. Yeah. So I put it on my list, and maybe we can have a good look at Naba tomorrow.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So, anybody got any sort of wrap-up questions, summaries? If you've got follow-up questions that we need to go into more detail that we didn't get to on just sticking to the topic, which was summoning, you know, use of gems for summoning, either to get troops or commanders. You got more follow-up questions, you can type them to me in Discord, email them to me, whatever the heck way you want to tell them to me. I'll put them on my list of topics. Maybe I'll just, here's the current topics. I'm going to type that into the chat. So there's the current topics that have been brought up over the past week. 2 of them I think did a good job of. Favorite mods and map selection. There's some other ones I've done already. And I'm going to be here tomorrow, same time, 11 Mountain. It is now 1 p.m. Mountain time. So I'm just going to wind up. Thank you guys for particularly everybody jumping in with questions and commentary. Rovsi, Jack Lord, Cherno, Captain Pennyworth, Lego Warrior dropped by. I'm really enjoying doing these group talks. They help me so I don't sit here and monologue like some cheesy villain in a comic book.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome anytime. All right.
Pleasure.
And my pleasure too. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Have a good day.